How could indigenous Siberians survive -50-degree winters on a single fruit that Europeans had never seen? This wasn't just food. They called it the berry that sustains generations. One plant could produce fruit for longer than most humans lived. It contained more healing power than blueberries and oranges combined. Then it disappeared from North America. Not because it stopped working, but because a post-war berry industry decided Americans should only grow what could be harvested by machines. By the end, you'll understand why this ancient berry survives conditions that would kill every fruit in your garden. And you'll discover why the USDA tried to erase it from nursery catalogs. The berry is the honeyberry, also called haskap. Stick around because what happened reveals something disturbing about how governments decided which foods you're allowed to grow. When Russian explorers first ventured into eastern Siberia in the 1600s, they found something that shouldn't have existed. Indigenous communities thriving in temperatures that killed European crops within days. The secret wasn't advanced agriculture. It was a single berry that grew wild across the taiga forests. The Ainu people of northern Japan had cultivated it for over 8,000 years. They called it haskap, which translates to berry of long life and good vision. In Siberia, communities planted honeyberries near their homes and watched them produce fruit for 50 years or more. One plant. Half a century of harvests. No replanting. No coddling. Just endless fruit in conditions where nothing else survived. The berries themselves looked strange to European eyes. Elongated like miniature plums. Deep blue, almost black when fully ripe. But the taste stopped people in their tracks. Sweet like blueberries with a tangy brightness that reminded tasters of oranges or raspberries. Complex. Layered. Nothing like the simple sweetness of cultivated fruits. If you've never heard of honeyberries, hit that like button and let's bring this ancient superfruit back together. But taste wasn't what made honeyberries legendary. It was what they could survive. Blueberry bushes die when temperatures drop below -20 degrees Fahrenheit. Orange trees can't tolerate anything below 28 degrees. Honeyberries laugh at -40. They evolved in regions where winter temperatures routinely hit -50 degrees Fahrenheit. The plants don't just survive these conditions. They require them. Honeyberries need at least 800 chill hours, those hours below 45 degrees Fahrenheit, to produce fruit. In warm climates, they simply won't set berries. They're built for cold that would shatter most fruit plants like glass. And they don't just survive cold. They survive neglect. Honeyberries grow in poor soil where blueberries would starve. They tolerate clay. They handle drought once established. Pests largely ignore them because North American insects haven't evolved to recognize them as food. Diseases that devastate blueberry crops, like mummy berry and botrytis, barely touch honeyberries. Russian botanists documented honeyberry plants over a century old still producing full crops. Think about that. You plant one bush. Your great-grandchildren harvest from it. But here's where honeyberries became legendary. The nutrition. Modern analysis shows honeyberries contain 3 times more anthocyanins than blueberries. Those are the antioxidants that give berries their health reputation. Pound for pound, honeyberries deliver more vitamin C than oranges. Not close to oranges. More than oranges. A single cup of honeyberries provides over 30 milligrams of vitamin C. That's half your daily requirement. Oranges can't match that concentration. The vitamin A levels exceed most berries. The polyphenol, those plant compounds linked to everything from heart health to cancer prevention, rank among the highest of any fruit. Japanese researchers found that haskap consumption improved eyesight in elderly subjects. Not maintained eyesight. Improved it. Siberian folk medicine used honeyberries to treat scurvy, infections, and cardiovascular problems. Not because of tradition or superstition. Because the berries actually worked. And they produce early. Most fruits ripen in mid to late summer. Honeyberries ripen in late May or early June, depending on the climate. They're the first fruit of the season in cold climates. When everything else is still flowering or setting fruit, honeyberries are ready to harvest. For homesteaders in harsh climates, that early harvest meant fresh fruit when the body craved it most after a long winter. It meant vitamin C before scurvy could take hold. It meant food security. But if honeyberries were this resilient, this nutritious, and this productive, Why did they disappear from American nurseries? The answer involves Soviet plant exchanges, mechanical harvesting requirements, and a government that decided some fruits didn't fit the American agricultural model. That's coming up next. The honeyberry's journey to North America started with good intentions. In the 1940s and 50s, during brief periods of U.S.-Soviet scientific cooperation, Russian botanists shared plant specimens with American researchers. Honeyberries arrived at university agriculture programs and the USDA. Scientists recognized their potential immediately. Cold hardy, disease resistant, nutritious, early ripening. Everything a northern fruit should be. But American agriculture in the post-war era was undergoing a transformation. The goal wasn't diversity. It was mechanization and standardization. Blueberries fit the model perfectly. Bushes grew uniform heights. Berries ripened at roughly the same time for mechanical harvesting. The fruit could withstand mechanical handling. And perhaps most importantly, the blueberry industry had already built processing infrastructure, marketing channels, and consumer demand. Honeyberries didn't fit. The berries ripened unevenly, which meant multiple harvests. They varied in size and shape depending on the variety. Some were soft when ripe, making mechanical harvesting difficult. The bushes grew in irregular shapes, not the tidy, uniform rows that machines required. And there was no existing market. Americans knew blueberries. They didn't know honeyberries. Marketing a new fruit required investment that nurseries and growers weren't willing to make. So the USDA made a choice. They continued blueberry breeding programs. They promoted blueberries for northern climates through agricultural extension services. They developed mechanical harvesting techniques for blueberries. And they quietly stopped promoting honeyberries. Not through any official policy. Just through neglect. Research funding dried up. University programs shifted to other crops. Nurseries stopped carrying honeyberry plants because agricultural extension agents weren't recommending them. By the 1970s, honeyberries had virtually disappeared from American nursery catalogs. A few botanical gardens maintained collections. Some university research stations kept specimens. But for practical purposes, the fruit had been erased. Not through any conspiracy. Just through economic calculation. Honeyberries didn't fit the industrial model. So the industry moved on without them. The same pattern played out in Canada, though less severely. Canadian researchers continued some breeding work, recognizing honeyberries' value for extreme northern climates. But commercial interest remained minimal. The Saskatchewan Fruit Program kept germplasm alive through the 1980s and 90s. Japanese breeders, however, never stopped. They'd been cultivating Haskap for centuries and saw no reason to quit. They developed improved varieties with larger berries, better flavor, and more uniform ripening. While North America forgot honeyberries, Japan perfected them. Drop a comment and tell me if you've ever tasted honeyberries before. The honeyberries' return started with climate change. Not as a consequence, but as a catalyst. In the 1990s and 2000s, agricultural researchers began searching for fruits that could withstand increasingly unpredictable weather. Late spring frosts were killing early blooming fruits. Droughts were stressing water-hungry crops. Winter temperature swings were damaging plants that couldn't handle rapid freeze-thaw cycles. Someone remembered the Siberian berry that thrived in chaos. Canadian researchers led the Rediscovery. The University of Saskatchewan's breeding program, which had quietly maintained honeyberry germplasm for decades, suddenly found funding. They began crossing the hardiest Siberian varieties with the tastiest Japanese cultivars. The goal was to create honeyberries that combined extreme cold tolerance with commercial viability. Better flavor. Larger berries. More uniform ripening. By the 2000s, they'd succeeded. Varieties like Borealis, Tundra, and Indigo Gem offered berries twice the size of wild honeyberries with improved sweetness and easier harvesting. At the same time, indigenous communities in Japan and Russia were experiencing a Haskap renaissance. Young people who dismissed the traditional berry as old-fashioned were rediscovering it. Japanese entrepreneurs developed Haskap wines, jams, and desserts. The fruit became trendy in Sapporo, where Haskap flavored everything from ice cream to cocktails appeared. Russian foragers in Siberia began organizing commercial harvests of wild honeyberries for urban markets. The berry that governments had tried to erase was coming back through grassroots enthusiasm. American homesteaders discovered honeyberries through permaculture and food forest movements. People seeking cold-hardy perennial fruits for self-sufficiency found references to this forgotten berry. Small nurseries began importing plants from Canada. Online forums filled with reports of success. Honeyberries thrived in Maine, Minnesota, and Montana where blueberries struggled. They produced abundant fruit with minimal care. They outlived everything else in the garden. Word spread slowly, but it spread. By 2010, the USDA noticed. Suddenly, the organization that had quietly abandoned honeyberries in the 50s was publishing fact sheets about them. Agricultural extension services began recommending them for northern gardens. Research stations started breeding programs. The turnaround was complete. Not because government priorities changed, but because farmers and gardeners demanded access to the plants. The market forced the institutions to catch up. And coming up, I'll show you exactly how to grow and use honeyberries, and why they might be the most resilient fruit you never knew you needed. Growing honeyberries requires unlearning almost everything you know about fruit gardening. They don't need perfect soil. They don't need constant fertilizer. They don't need elaborate pest management. They need cold. At least 800 chill hours below 45 degrees. If you live where winter actually happens, you can grow honeyberries. If you live in the deep south, you can't. It's that simple. Plant them in pairs. Honeyberries require cross-pollination between different varieties. One bush won't produce much fruit alone. Two compatible varieties will bury you in berries. Space them 6 feet apart in full sun to partial shade. They tolerate clay soil, sandy soil, and everything in between. Just avoid waterlogged conditions. Mulch around the base to retain moisture. Then ignore them. They don't want or need much attention. The berries ripen in late May through early June in most climates. They'll be pale greenish-white at first. As they ripen, they turn light blue, then deep blue-purple. But here's the trick, they look ripe about a week before they actually are. If you pick them when they first turn blue, they'll be astringently tart. Wait another week after they look ripe. Then taste one. When the flavor has deepened from tart to sweet tart with complexity, harvest everything. The berries won't all ripen simultaneously, so check every few days. Fresh honeyberries taste like blueberries with a citrus kick. Some varieties lean more toward raspberry notes. Others have a slight floral quality. They're complex in a way that domesticated blueberries aren't. Use them fresh in fruit salads, yogurt, or cereal. They're exceptional for baking because their tartness cuts through sugar in muffins, pies, and cakes. The flavor intensifies when cooked. Honeyberry jam has a depth that blueberry jam can't match. They freeze perfectly. Spread them on a baking sheet, freeze solid, then transfer to bags. They'll last a year in the freezer without degrading. Unlike some berries that turn to mush when thawed, honeyberries maintain decent texture. Thawed berries work fine for smoothies or baking. And because they're so high in natural pectin, they make jam easily without added pectin. Just berries and sugar. They'll gel naturally. The environmental benefits matter too. One honeyberry bush can produce fruit for 50 years. That's 50 years without replanting, without tilling, without disturbing the soil. The plants require virtually no chemical inputs. No fungicides. Minimal fertilizer. No pesticides because pests don't recognize them. They're bee-friendly, blooming early when pollinators need food most. And they sequester carbon in woody growth that persists for decades. As perennial fruit systems go, honeyberries rank among the most sustainable. So there you have it. Honeyberries. 3 times the antioxidants of blueberries. More vitamin C than oranges. Survives negative 40-degree winters. Produces fruit for 50 years from a single planting. Indigenous Siberians sustained themselves on this berry for 8,000 years. Then it disappeared from North America, not because it failed, but because post-war industrial agriculture decided Americans should only grow fruits that fit mechanical harvesting. The USDA abandoned research. Nurseries stopped selling plants. The berry nearly vanished. Now it's coming back. Climate change made its resilience valuable again. Indigenous communities never forgot it. Japanese breeders perfected it. Canadian researchers brought it back to North America. And homesteaders discovered that this forgotten berry outperforms every other fruit in cold climates. Not through marketing. Through performance. Stop relying on finicky blueberries that die in hard winters when you could be growing honeyberries. One simple swap gives you more nutrition, less maintenance, and a connection to 8,000 years of indigenous wisdom that American agriculture tried to bury. If you found this helpful, hit that like button and subscribe for more forgotten crops and ancient food wisdom. Drop a comment and tell me if you're going to try growing honeyberries. Now go plant something that actually thrives without your constant attention.